one of the world's most strategically important regions.
Welcome back once again, as we have been talking over the situation between the U.S. and Iran, and as the U.S. now is convening a cabinet meeting in order to face the confrontations or evolving confrontation, possible confrontation with Iran following the U.S. strikes that the U.S. calls defensive and Iran label as violation of a ceasefire. And amidst all that, the Strait of Hormuz remains a big issue, not only to both parties but to the whole world and economy at large. On this very topic, we're very delighted to be joined for more details with over the phone with Mrs. Monica William, international relations expert. Good morning, Mrs. William.
Good morning. Thank you for having me today.
It's a real pleasure to have you on the Breakfast Show. Now, my first question to you is that how does President Trump reconcile military escalation with ongoing diplomacy? I mean, they contradict with each other, but how exactly do the U.S. administration have a vision of that particular nature?
Of course, you can tackle with the two passes or the contradiction passes from the diplomatic and the military pressure based on the latest statement by U.S. President Donald Trump yesterday, which of course show a clear shift in the American approach toward Iranian conflict. U.S. no longer appears focused on reaching a new agreement, but instead seems to be raising its negotiating demands while using economic pressure, military threats, and time as tools to secure better terms in any final deal. So Trump strongly denied reports about an amendment agreement or even temporary momentum or memorandum of understanding between both sides, which reflect a growing American belief that Iran is still unwilling to make major concession, especially of course on the most extreme sensitive issues, Iranian enrichment and Iran stockpile of highly enriched uranium and Tehran future role in the Strait of Hormuz. So in this context, we have to attack that Trump remarks about this not being pressured by upcoming U.S. midterm election, as he mentioned yesterday, which appear aimed at weakening one of the Iran key assumptions. Of course, Iran on the other side believes that raising oil prices, inflation inside the United States, and political pressure on Republicans before the election would eventually force Donald Trump to accept a quick deal even under softer conditions. On the other side, Trump tried to send the opposite message by suggesting that the United States is able or prepared to continue the war until 2026, of course, late of this year if necessary. So this means that U.S. now is increasingly considers the option of long-term frozen conflict, and it's part, of course, of what you mentioned earlier, that both sides between the diplomatic part and the pressure or military pressure in this figure.
Right. People were talking about, yes, if you'd like to elaborate. Hello?
No?
Yes. My second question to you is the discussion of, the usual discussion of reopening the Hormuz Strait or not opening it now. Iran's public discussion now is taking the side of probably reopening the Hormuz and reducing the military presence of the the U.S. Army that is met on the other side by a U.S. denial. So how exactly is the real situation now when it comes to that type of situation?
Part also of his statement yesterday, which of course, as we mentioned, it replies or decline and shift the American approach in this regard. Strait of Hormuz is part of these messages which carry serious implications. They reflect a firm American rejection of any arrangement that gives Iran a permanent political or regulatory role in the strait. The United States view Hormuz as one of the world's most critical energy routes, with nearly 20% of global oil supply. On this result, or for this reason, U.S. consider any direct Iranian control a threat to global economic security, and the indirect American warning to Amman yesterday was therefore a message that the United States wouldn't accept any arrangement that allow Iran to regulate shipping or impose fees and ensure controls on international vessels. One of the important by on this aspect, of course, it's the Iran try to reach a quick agreement appear much slower, especially with growing influence of hardness in U.S., including allies of Netanyahu and Republic figures with calling for a total deal with Tehran. So it's what now happened in the Strait of Hormuz. It's part of the big contradiction or different approaches between Iran and the United States, and of course it's one of the most important files that of course not agreed between both sides.
Right. If negotiations fail, and I mean this is probably might be quite possible, in that case the force is going to reposition itself again between the two parts. Then how would we assess the Gulf security guarantees, the situation in the Gulf and the army bases inside the Gulf areas that might be threatened as a result of the retaliation and the exchange of strikes between both sides, especially that the Gulf security is a red line that nobody has to be able to step. So in that case, how is that particular issue going to be handled?
First of all, if we can say that the possible scenarios between both sides, and of course it's part of the impact on the European Gulf. Current confrontation between both sides remains highly unstable, as we mentioned, and unpredictable, and several scenarios could emerge in the coming days, depend on the success or failure of the negotiations. So the level of regional escalation and the position of regional and international powers, and of course Gulf conflict is likely to remain the central arena affected by any future developments, and because of course its strategic importance to global energy markets and maritime trade and the military balance, and of course due to the geographical aspect in this regard. The first of all, there's or first scenario is temporary political settlement. Most likely short-term scenario is temporary political agreement between both sides. Under this scenario, both sides may agree on limited understanding regarding partial sanction and the gradual reopening of maritime routes in Strait of Hormuz, and of course the uranium enrichment. The United States would likely present such an agreement as success in containing, of course, Iran nuclear ambitions, while Iran attempts to mark it domestically as proof that it's resisting American pressure without surrendering. On the other side, and in this scenario, Gulf region would experience relative calm. Oil exports would gradually recover. Of course, it's not full recovery, and energy prices could stabilize. However, the agreement could remain fragile somehow because the deeper disputes between the two sides, especially over the regional influence and military presence, wouldn't appear. On the other side, and the second scenario, the long-term no war, no peace situation. Of course, it's part of or the create no war, no peace, where sanctions, cyber attacks, and military threats, maritime tension, and indirect confrontation continue for months or even years. And under this scenario, Gulf countries would remain under constant pressure. Shipping insurance costs would stay high, foreign investment could slow down, and energy markets would continue to experience uncertainty. And Gulf countries, of course, in this regard, would strengthen their security partnership and military presence while trying to avoid direct involvement in the conflict.
Right. From where we can, observe the situation thoroughly, and military observers and people are assessing the whole situation, can easily notice that the Strait of Hormuz have emerged itself or evolved as the main issue or the core issue now between both sides. So who exactly, according to a right assessment or a full image, right image, is in full control of the decision of opening or closing the Strait of Hormuz, and how exactly could that be taken if it doesn't go the right way by mediators?
Strait of Hormuz, as we say, has become the main strategic chord in the current confrontation between both sides, the United States and Iran, and control over maritime traffic and energy flows through the strait is no longer just a regional issue, but a central factor shaping global economic and geographical calculations. And of course, Iran knew this importance of this chord very well. For Iran, trade represents one of its stronger pressure against Washington and its allies. And of course, Iran understands that trade navigation or creating instability in Iran can rapidly raise global oil prices, which of course raised from $75 to $120 and increased international pressure for political settlement. Of course, United States and Gulf countries maintaining freedom of navigation in the strait is considered a strategic red line tied directly to global energy security and regional stability. As a result, the Strait of Hormuz now moved from being just geographic waterway to becoming the center bargaining tool in negotiation and escalation and regional power balance calculations, even if it's not this the case before the war.
Right. On that note, would like to thank you so much, Mrs. Monica William, International Relations Expert. Thank you so much. It was a great pleasure having you over the Breakfast Show, and we're going to go to a short break and come back to you, so stay with us.